You did not ask. You did not ask why my phone screen glowed at 3 in the morning, reflecting those pale likes on Sam Avery's account. You did not ask why I suddenly needed to check your social media preferences, the quiet hearts you left on his photos, the encouraging thumbs up under his posts. You did not ask how the suspicion started. You just scrolled on, tapped a few times, and left a digital fingerprint on his feed. That's where it began for me, Melissa Carter. The first jolt of electricity shooting up my spine, the first wave of real panic in my chest. I remember it clearly. The bedroom was dark except for that faint rectangle of light in my hand. My fingers were trembling, and my breath came in short bursts. It was as if each new light carved a fresh crack in my sternum. I scrolled through photo after photo. Sam leaning against a glossy red sports car, Sam standing in a half-finished service bay, Sam flipping burgers at some late summer barbecue with that stupid grin on his face. And next to each image, liked by Melissa Carter. It made my stomach twist. Why, I asked myself, would my wife bother to leave a public trace of interest in a man I had once trained in my own garage? A man more than a decade younger, with a swagger that overshadowed his boyish face. My throat felt tight. My chest actually ached, like a cold claw was squeezing my ribcage. I'd like to call it a physical sign of heartbreak, but in the moment it felt more like a symptom of some unnamed disease. My heart pounded so hard that night, I thought I might crack my teeth with how tense my jaw became. I tried to calm myself. James, breathe. James, stop conjuring nightmares. But the evidence was right there. I recognized Sam's shirt in one post, the same greasy navy t-shirt he used to wear when I taught him the basics of engine tuning. He was shorter than me, scrawny, but with nimble hands that made him a quick study. I used to think of him like a kid brother in need of direction. I forced myself to put the phone down. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe you were just supporting someone you knew. Maybe you liked hundreds of posts from dozens of people. Maybe you did it absent-mindedly. All those maybes churned in my brain, tangling with dread. But a hidden corner in me whispered, no, this is not innocent. This is not random. I tried to sleep. My head throbbed. My back felt knotted. And every time I closed my eyes, I pictured your phone in your delicate hands, your fingertips tapping that heart button. My wife, Melissa Carter. No, let me be precise. Melissa Browning Carter. That's how you used to sign official documents. That's how I learned to see you, fully. Browning, the girl from Cincinnati with big blue eyes, plus Carter, the woman who shared my bed for years. I did not rest well. The next morning, you woke up before me, took a shower. I heard the water running. My body felt stiff and heavy, as though someone replaced my muscles with bags of sand overnight. It wasn't just mental. It was physical pain, a genuine ache in my shoulders, chest, and guts. I rolled out of bed and nearly stumbled, my left leg tingling with pins and needles. I padded toward the bathroom, pressed my ear against the door. The shower hissed. I heard you humming, oblivious, relaxed. When you emerged, towel around your body, damp hair on your shoulders, I forced a smile. Morning, I said. You just nodded, rummaged through the closet. You dressed more carefully than usual. Fresh blouse, matching bra and panties, I noticed, though you tried to hide them from my view. Lip gloss, a subtle dab of perfume. Meeting new clients today? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Yeah, you replied, eyes not meeting mine. Long day ahead. I nodded. Right. Then you left the room to grab coffee. I stared at the empty space you'd occupied, feeling an invisible bruise in my chest. I've been James Carter for 42 years, a mechanical engineer, father to a boy I believed was mine, and husband. At least until that morning, when I watched your retreating figure and felt something unrecognizable in my veins. A fury that threatened to knock me to my knees, combined with a panic so acute I thought I would pass out. I pressed a hand to my sternum, tried to slow my breathing, tried to keep it together. But inside, I was fracturing. That day, every movement felt slow, like trudging through swamp water. At my automotive plant, I found myself double-checking the simplest calculations. Coworkers asked if I was feeling sick. I might have snapped at them. I might have said something about allergies. I can't recall. My mind was elsewhere. My mind was on the phone calls. Yours, where I'd caught faint giggles, the hush in your tone when you said you were busy with real estate. The way you switched bras more often. The way you tested different perfumes. I wondered if I was losing my mind, reading too much into small changes. Part of me hoped that was the case, but the heartbreak was unrelenting. It crawled along my spine, a low-level alarm that never shut off. That night, I came home to find you cooking dinner. Spaghetti with a thin sauce. Nothing special. But there was a new tension in the air. You rarely initiated conversation, glancing at me only when necessary. I watched your hands grip the spoon. I noticed a subtle tremor in your fingers. Did you sense that I suspected something? Did you feel guilt, or were you just worried I might ask the question you dreaded? I pushed my plate aside halfway through. Melissa Browning Carter, I said, deliberately using your full name. You didn't meet my eyes. Is everything okay with you? You swallowed. Sure. Why wouldn't it be? Just checking. My voice sounded flat, even to my own ears. I felt an ache in my temples. You were out late last Tuesday. Another client. You shrugged. Yes. Took longer than expected. I tried to read your face, but you perfected a neutral mask. My frustration rose, but I clamped it down. All right, I said. Just be careful on those highways. Of course, you muttered, cleaning up. I couldn't taste the spaghetti. The air in my own house seemed stale. That night, I made a decision. Enough guesswork, James. You suspect, but you need facts. So I rummaged in the garage for an old camera. I found an outdated model with a small lens, capable of streaming footage to an app on my phone. I placed it in the corner of our bedroom, high on a shelf, angled so it captured the bed and the door. You were busy folding laundry in the living room, so I had time. My heart hammered as I taped it to the wall behind a small decorative figurine. Then I tested it. The app showed a grainy feed, but it was workable. I felt dirty doing it. This was not how I wanted our marriage to be. But the possibility you might betray me. No, let's be real. Were already betraying me. Burned too strong. I had to confirm. Days passed, and you seemed oblivious. I monitored the feed from work. Usually, the camera showed only an empty bed or your figure lying alone, reading. But occasionally, it captured you getting ready, smoothing your skirt in the mirror. You were more attentive to your appearance than I remembered. My anxiety spiked every time I saw you sigh at your phone, roll your shoulders, and check your makeup. I also installed Trexter, a navigation tracker. At first, it was just a tool to avoid getting lost on the highways, especially when I visited suppliers out of town. But it had features beyond that, locational data that could be shared if you paired phones. One evening, when you left your phone charging by my side, I quickly toggled on location sharing to see if I could track your routes through your own Trexter account. After that, I watched your movements on Tuesdays. Every Tuesday, you'd tell me about a long client meeting, an open house, or some real estate training session. But the map told a different story. The line on the screen veered off the usual road, turned onto a smaller highway, then onto a service road near an industrial area. A single station, staffed by none other than Sam Avery, my old pupil. I stared at those blinking dots on the map, swallowing the bile in my throat. It felt too surreal. I imagined you pulling up to the station, stepping out of your car, smiling at Sam. In my head, I saw him smirking back, that confident half-grin I used to find endearing when I mentored him. Now it made me want to put my fist through a wall. Still, I wanted more proof. Because some twisted part of me needed absolute certainty before confronting you. The camera feed was my next step. I prayed I'd never see him in my bedroom. I prayed it was only the station, maybe just emotional flirtation. But my prayers were worthless, because one Tuesday near noon, I opened the camera app and saw motion. At first, I only caught your figure entering the bedroom, unbuttoning your blouse. My pulse quickened. Then Sam stepped into the frame behind you, wearing his greasy uniform pants, a t-shirt that clung to his skinny torso. He put his arms around you, and you leaned back against him. I felt something tear in my chest, like a muscle ripping from my bones. My breath froze. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the screen, though it was the last thing that I wanted to see. You turned to face him, kissed him, your hands sliding up his arms. Your body language, desperate, wanting, shook me to the core. My mind whirled in confusion, fury, heartbreak. And yes, there was an undeniably sexual charge in that scene, an erotic tension I never thought I'd witness from my own wife with someone else. I want to say I shouted or smashed my phone. Instead, I let out a ragged gasp that sounded more like an animal in pain. My entire body trembled, sweat coating my brow. I watched you push Sam onto the bed, climb atop him. Your hair fell forward, and though the lens didn't capture every angle, I could see enough to know your expression was pure hunger. I heard little moans, muffled by the cheap camera microphone. The fact that I could hear them at all made my stomach churn. Physically, I felt ill. My head spun, and a sharp ache shot through my chest, radiating to my shoulders. My arms felt weak, as though they were made of rubber. When you arched your back, moaning his name, I nearly blacked out. I'd never felt pain like that. Melissa Browning Carter. I'd broken bones before, playing football in high school. But that pain was nothing compared to the searing agony that invaded every cell of my body. When the feed ended, and you both left the room, I stared blankly at my phone, unsure how to continue breathing. That was my bed, my life, my wife. And here I was, watching it from behind a screen, powerless. A few minutes later, I bolted to the bathroom at work and vomited. My legs wobbled. I splashed water on my face. Looking in the mirror, I barely recognized the man there. Hollow cheeks, bloodshot eyes, a faint tremor in the jaw. I wanted to punch the glass and let the shards dig into my knuckles. Instead, I pressed my hands to the cold sink and let out a shaky breath. What followed was a blur of hours and days, a slow-motion breakdown I kept hidden from you. I didn't confront you yet. Why? Maybe because I needed time to steel myself. Maybe I thought it was a nightmare that would vanish if I ignored it. Or maybe a part of me wanted to confirm how far the betrayal went, to see if you brought Sam to our bed again. I began checking the camera feed daily. My chest burned whenever I tapped the app icon. Each time, I braced for that sickening punch. But strangely, it didn't happen every day, only some Tuesdays. Yet that was enough to keep me in a perpetual state of dread, always anticipating the next time. Then I noticed something else. The shift in your routine. You'd be extra cheerful on Monday nights, and on Tuesdays, you'd slip out earlier than usual. By Wednesday, you carried a certain glow, as though you found a secret wellspring of gratification. Meanwhile, I walked around with a lead weight in my chest, carrying an invisible wound. It became too much. I started to question the paternity of our child, the boy I'd raised for 5 years. That seed of doubt had been planted months earlier, when I noticed his eyes looked more green than mine. Mine are hazel, but they tilt brown. His shape, his mannerisms, something felt off. I never admitted that fear to anyone. But once I saw you with Sam, the question erupted like a volcano. So one afternoon, while our son was distracted, I used a swab from a home DNA kit. I felt monstrous doing it, swiping the inside of his cheek while pretending it was just a fun game about exploring germs. He giggled. I forced a smile, holding back tears. A few days later, the results came in, 0% chance of paternity. I received that email on a Friday after a grueling day at the plant. I read the lines again and again. Test indicates that James Carter is not the biological father. It was official. My body felt numb. I kept blinking, hoping the words would change. My arms ached. My heart pounded. Then something inside me just went dark. A switch flipped off. I didn't rage or cry. It was as though my emotional circuit breakers had blown. I became cold, practical. The next morning, I told you we needed to go to the courthouse. I said, "Melissa Browning Carter, we're ending this right now." Immediately. You tried to talk, eyes brimming with tears, but I shut you down. I said, "I don't want an explanation. I just want out." You sobbed, tried to take my hand, but I drew it away. The physical pain in my chest flared again, a reminder of all those nights I'd loved you, believed in you. But I didn't yell. I didn't degrade you. I kept my voice steady, my posture stiff, my words measured. Watching you cry gave me no satisfaction, but it also didn't move me to mercy. I was locked in an icy calm. Within days, I pushed for a divorce. No reconciliation, no therapy. I told the clerk at the courthouse, "I want this done as soon as possible." Maybe it was my stoic presence, maybe it was the bitterness of the situation, but they got the paperwork in order quickly. You kept sobbing, repeating, "Please, let's talk. You have to listen." I refused. I wanted none of it. When the day of the final hearing came, you wore a conservative black dress. You tried to speak to the judge about time for reflection, but I shut it down. "No," I said. "I want it over." The judge sighed, but everything was in place. He didn't see a reason to delay. We walked out, you trailing me, and that was that. Our marriage ended with a single signature, a few stamps, and zero compromise. You stood on the courthouse steps, tears streaming down your face, your shoulders shaking. I felt no triumph, just a sick emptiness. The wind was cold that day. I remember noticing how your hair whipped around your face, how your mascara stained your cheeks. You tried to speak, but I lifted my hand. "Don't," I said. "We're done, Melissa Browning Carter. Don't call me. Don't text me." Then I turned and left. The next 3 months passed like I was in a void. I moved my stuff into a small furnished apartment, leaving most of the furniture behind. I visited my father once or twice. I felt adrift. The only anchor was my love for the boy I'd thought was my biological son. Strange, that love never actually died. I still took him on weekends because you were busy with your real estate showings, or maybe you just needed personal time. The arrangement was unofficial. You never demanded anything of me. Perhaps you felt too guilty or too ashamed to stand in my way. I didn't question what you did during your free time. I didn't ask if you stayed with Sam or if you had regrets. I just kept my distance. A quiet wall between us, stretching a mile high. A self-imposed exile, if you will. And in those months, I realized something terrifying. I no longer recognized myself. I'd always been James Carter, the man who built engines, the responsible father, the faithful husband. Now, who was I? The divorce hammered a wedge into my identity. My chest still ached sometimes, especially when I woke up from nightmares of you and Sam entangled on our bed. Some nights, I stared at the ceiling, feeling as though a steel bar was pressing across my ribs, making it hard to breathe. Pain became my companion. I tried to run from it, bury it with extra hours at work, or by tinkering in the garage with old car parts. But it followed me relentlessly, gnawing at my nerves. My only respite was when my not-son, somehow still my boy, came to visit. He was 5, bright-eyed, always wanting to show me his drawings of trucks or robots. We'd go to a local park, toss a ball, or maybe watch a kid's movie. For those moments, I almost felt normal. But inevitably, I'd remember the test results, the infidelity, the betrayal. One Sunday evening, after I dropped him back at your apartment, I decided I'd had enough. Enough sleepless nights, enough bitterness, enough confusion about my identity. I was done letting your betrayal define me. So I resolved to confront you one last time. Lay it all out. Not to reconcile or reopen old wounds, but to unleash the words that had been strangling my throat for months. I called you. My voice was steady. Melissa Browning Carter. I want to talk. Face to face. You went quiet for a second. All right, you said. Come by tomorrow. I'll make coffee. The next day, I arrived at your new place. A modest apartment, smaller than our house. You answered the door, wearing a simple sweater and jeans, your hair in a loose ponytail. You looked tired, eyes with faint circles beneath them. You tried to smile politely, but it was forced. You led me to the living room. The walls were sparsely decorated, just a couple of family photos and some real estate certificates. You offered me a seat on the couch, then sat across from me. The coffee steamed on the table. I took a moment to observe you. Your knees were pressed together, your hands resting on your lap. You tried to meet my gaze, but your eyes flickered away. I cleared my throat. Tell me everything, I said, voice low. You swallowed. Everything about what? I clenched my fists on my thighs. Everything about Sam Avery. Everything about why you did it. You opened your mouth, then closed it again, eyes shining with tears. A flush stained your cheeks. James, I never meant to hurt you. Don't give me that, I snapped. You. I paused, took a breath, tried not to let anger overshadow me. My chest was tight again, that old ache flaring. You must have known how it would crush me. And still, you did it. Your tears spilled over, and you looked down at the floor. I got lonely, you whispered. I know it sounds selfish. It was selfish. You worked so much, James. You withdrew. We stopped communicating. I laughed bitterly. So you found Sam Avery. That was your solution. You lifted your eyes, tears trailing your cheeks. He made me feel alive. At first, it was just flirting. Then it got more physical, more emotional. I didn't know how to stop. I don't blame you for divorcing me. Your shoulders shook. I wish we could have talked. I tapped the side of my head, as if deep in thought, but the truth was my entire body felt like a live wire. My breathing was shallow. You want to talk now, Melissa Browning Carter. Fine. Let's talk about how you brought Sam into our bed. How you decided to have his child and pass him off as mine. You sucked in a breath, tears sliding faster. I didn't plan that. I didn't even know for sure if he was Sam's or yours until I saw the baby's eyes. By then, I was scared. You were so happy. I held up a hand. Stop. Don't rewrite history. I remember those days. I was over the moon, yes. But you could have told me. Instead, you hid behind a lie for 5 years. James, you whispered. I was terrified. I loved you. I still do in some way. Stop saying that, I hissed, leaning forward. Don't taint the word love. You swallowed, fresh sobs making your voice tremble. I can't change what happened. I'm sorry, James, I'm sorry. I stared at you, thinking about all those nights in our bed, the stolen kisses that were never mine, the child who wasn't my blood. My fists clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. And Sam, where is he now? Your tears slowed, and your expression hardened. He's not around. We tried to make something work, but it fell apart. He's young, James. Irresponsible. I saw him for what he is once we didn't have to hide. He doesn't love me, and I can't pretend he does. I studied your face, the way your jaw tensed, the bitterness in your eyes. It felt almost surreal. So, I said, you traded everything for a man who's already gone. You nodded, tears slipping down once more. Yes. For a moment, the room was silent except for your soft crying. I felt a hollow swirl in my gut. The pain remained, gnawing at my chest. But I also felt a flicker of grim satisfaction. Finally, you'd spoken the truth. I looked around the room, at the cheap furniture, the lack of warmth. You said you wanted to talk. I said, my voice steadier now. So talk. Convince me I shouldn't hate you. Your lips quivered. I don't have an excuse. I was selfish. Maybe I wanted the excitement, the rush. You were always so stable, so predictable. And that was good, but part of me craved something else. I know it's not justified. I know I destroyed your trust. I don't expect forgiveness. I let that sink in. The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. I imagined all the nights I'd come home, exhausted, maybe lacking in spontaneity, maybe failing to show you the passion you once craved. My rational mind understood your reasons, but my heart refused to sympathize. I rose from the couch, pacing around the living room. My shoulders throbbed, the old ache intensifying. Give me a reason, I said quietly, not to walk out that door and never speak to you again. Give me one good reason to keep letting our son visit me on weekends, to keep you in my orbit in any way. You stood as well, stepping closer, though you didn't dare touch me. Because the boy loves you, James. You're the only father he's ever known. I know you're not his biological dad. But what? I spun around to face you, chest heaving. My vision blurred with anger. But he thinks I'm just a safe bet. A convenient caretaker. The stable man while Sam Avery was the fling. No, you said. Your voice choked. Because you love him. I see it in your eyes. You may hate me, but you don't hate him. I froze, the truth of your words sinking in. My fists unclenched. I exhaled long and slow, feeling tears burn behind my eyes. I fought them off, swallowing the lump in my throat. I don't hate him. No, I whispered. But do you realize how confusing this is for me? I don't know what to feel anymore. Pain, anger, heartbreak, some leftover sense of responsibility. Sometimes I feel nothing. You reached out as though to touch my arm, but then you pulled back. I know. I'm sorry. I gave a bitter laugh. Sorry. I stared into your eyes. What do you expect me to do with that? Smack you? Scream at you? Call you names? I won't. I'm past all that. You covered your face with your hands, a broken sob escaping. You have every right. You managed. I deserve whatever anger you have. I inhaled. My chest still hurt, a raw ache radiating outward. Part of me wanted to deliver a final, scathing rant, to reduce you to tears again. But standing there in that sparse living room, I realized no words could capture the betrayal, the heartbreak. Nothing would truly balance the scales, so I walked to the door. You made a soft sound of confusion, but I paused in the doorway, turning back. Melissa Browning Carter. I said, voice oddly calm. I will always be in the boy's life, because he's innocent. He's the only connection left that I have to you, and I refuse to poison him with our mess. But you and I, we're done. Your lips quivered, fresh tears gathering. I understand. I nodded once. I mean it. Don't call me unless it's about him. Don't text me. Don't come by. You wanted excitement. You got it. And all that's left is this. I swept my gaze around, letting the emptiness speak for itself. Live with your choice. Without waiting for your reply, I left. I walked down the hallway, my steps echoing. And in that moment, I expected relief, a sense of triumph maybe. Instead, I only felt a hollow calm, as though I'd left behind a piece of my soul in that room. In the weeks that followed, I focused on my job. My coworkers asked if I was okay. I shrugged. Some days the pain flared up again, a tightness around my ribs that made it hard to breathe. Most nights, I slept fitfully. Occasionally, I'd see Sam Avery around town, once at a grocery store. He spotted me, gave a half-wave, then turned away quickly. Coward. I clenched my jaw so hard I worried I'd crack a tooth. But I did nothing. I didn't confront him. I didn't chase after him. My revenge was simpler. Living my life, cold and disciplined, free of illusions, because a part of me realized something deeper. No matter how many times I replayed the betrayal, it wouldn't change the outcome. And if I stooped to violence, I'd only tarnish my own dignity further. Sometimes, I'd stand in the mirror, looking at a man I barely recognized. The lines on my face looked deeper, my hair had flecks of gray. I was only 42, but I felt older, harder. I stared into my hazel eyes, searching for the person I once was. That man was gone, replaced by someone whose heart had cracked open. I started journaling late at night, writing out my thoughts in short bursts. I hate her. I feel nothing. I want to hold my boy. I want to kill Sam. I want to forget. My handwriting got sloppier each time, my pen pressing into the paper until it almost tore. But the words poured out, raw and unfiltered. Over time, the physical pain in my chest lessened. I still had the occasional flare, like a muscle spasm. I had trouble explaining it to doctors. It was stress. They said, possibly an anxiety reaction. They prescribed me mild muscle relaxants, told me to meditate or find a therapist. But I couldn't stand the idea of baring my soul to a stranger, so I pushed through. Then, life found a new rhythm. Working, eating alone, seeing the boy on weekends, taking him to that same park. I never asked about you. I never told him about Sam. As far as he knew, I was still Dad, just living somewhere else. One Saturday after I dropped him off, I sat in my car outside your place for a long while. You didn't come out. I didn't see your silhouette in the window. Maybe you were away. Maybe you were home, avoiding me. I turned the key in the ignition, a sense of resolution setting in. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked calm, almost stony. I realized in that moment that I didn't need to define myself by this tragedy anymore. Yes, the betrayal was real. Yes, my heart had been shattered. Yes, I still felt the echoes of that heartbreak in my body. But the other side of the coin was my freedom. I was no longer entangled in your lies. I started to drive, the city lights reflecting off my windshield. A few months prior, I would have been consumed by anger at this hour, replaying the images from the camera feed. Now I only felt a quiet acceptance, a strange calm. I didn't know who I was, not completely. But I knew who I wasn't anymore. A blind husband, naive, trusting. That innocence was gone, and part of me grieved for it. Another part welcomed the clarity. Clarity didn't mean immediate peace, though. I still had nights where I'd dream about the life we once had. I'd see you, pregnant with a child I believed was mine, smiling at me with that mixture of hope and love. Then I'd wake up, chest squeezing, tears burning. But I'd get up, wash my face, and keep going. That's all I could do. One day, I ran into Sam Avery at a local diner. I'd gone in for a quick lunch. He was at the counter, wearing his usual grease-stained t-shirt. I paused, my blood running cold, the old anger sparking. I considered turning around, but something in me said, face him. So I approached. He looked over, startled, and nearly dropped his burger. James, he said, flushing. Oh, hey. I inclined my head. Sam Avery. Surprised to see you here. He shifted on the stool, eyes down. Yeah, I'm not at that station anymore. Got a new gig in another shop. I studied him. He looked thinner, maybe a bit haunted. The tension in my body remained, but not as intense as I'd expected. You still seeing her? I asked, my tone carefully controlled. He swallowed. No, that ended a while ago. We weren't good for each other. I nodded, letting silence fill the space. The diner bustled with midday customers, the clatter of plates and silverware a distant roar. Sam looked like he wanted to crawl under the floor tiles. Do you regret it? I asked at last, voice low. He pressed his lips together, staring at his half-eaten burger. Then he exhaled. Yeah, I do. I mean, I was an idiot. I got caught up. I know it's not. I know sorry doesn't cut it. I nodded again, the ache in my chest flaring once more. No, it doesn't, I said. But thanks for saying it. He managed a bleak smile. Sure. And that was it. No punches thrown, no dramatic confrontation. I just turned and walked away, leaving him at the counter with his regrets. As I left the diner, my limbs felt lighter, as though I'd put down a heavy load I'd been carrying for too long. Days stretched into weeks. The holidays came. I spent time with my father, cooked turkey for a small group of relatives, and you took the boy to see your parents. It was all so different, so fractured from the life we once had as a family. I felt pangs of sorrow, but they were manageable. At night, I still woke sometimes with that phantom ache. Other times, I dreamed of the final hearing at the courthouse, replaying the moment the judge declared our marriage dissolved. But each day, the pain softened. I replaced old routines with new ones, found a local gym, started lifting weights to distract myself, to channel the anger. I discovered that a set of barbells can be a better therapist than a stranger with a notepad. Eventually, I found a new normal. I'd drive my boy to kindergarten on Monday mornings if I could manage the time off. I'd exchange polite nods with you on the handoff. We barely spoke beyond necessary details. But that was enough. We didn't fight or hurl accusations anymore. We existed in parallel universes, connected only by him. One Tuesday, about 6 months after the divorce, I found myself outside the old house. It had sold to a new family. I don't even remember why I ended up there, maybe just a nostalgic urge to revisit the site of so many memories. I parked across the street. The new owners had repainted the shutters, planted fresh flowers by the porch. I gazed at the window to what used to be our bedroom. I thought of the camera I'd hidden, the heartbreak I'd witnessed there. My chest tightened, but I didn't linger. I turned the ignition and drove away. That chapter was over. I wish I could say that pain simply dissolved after that. It didn't. It returned in waves. Birthdays, holidays, random Tuesdays that reminded me of your schedule. But each time, I faced it with a little more resilience. My body still felt scars from the stress, an occasional stiffness in my back, a flutter in my chest. But I was learning to live with it, to accept it like a scar from a harsh lesson. The final confrontation came much later. Not with you, not with Sam, with myself. I looked in the mirror one night, older lines etched in my face, gray creeping into my hair. My eyes looked sharp, though, a certain edge I'd never had before. I asked the reflection, "Who are you now, James Carter?" Not the knave husband, not the father of your own blood, but a father still. A man alone. A man shaped by betrayal. I waited, but the reflection offered no answer. I felt tears welling. For once, I let them come. They slid down my cheeks, hot and bitter. I gasped, pressing a hand to my chest, the old ache flaring. But I didn't fight it. I accepted it. I embraced that pain as part of who I had become, and in that acceptance, I found a strange peace. I didn't know exactly who I was, but I knew I was free to discover it. The illusions were gone. The betrayals were laid bare. I had the power to rebuild myself. That sense of calm deepened over the following weeks. When the boy called, I picked up the phone. I asked about his day, listened to his stories, promised to see him on the weekend. I no longer worried about your new life. I didn't check up on Sam Avery or ask mutual acquaintances for updates on you. I let you exist in your own circle. One Saturday, I had the boy in my apartment. He was laughing at a cartoon on my TV, sprawled on the couch. I watched him, a tender warmth flickering in my chest. Blood or not, he was part of me, part of my life story. I realized I still cared deeply for him, and that truth made me feel alive. Later, we drove to the park, played with a frisbee. He ran around, shrieking with laughter. I stood there, the wind rustling the trees, the sun dipping low in the sky, painting everything gold. And I felt that old ache in my ribs, just briefly. Then it receded, replaced by a quiet gratitude. When I took him back to your place, you opened the door. Our eyes met. You looked uncertain, as if expecting me to lash out, or maybe just walk away. Instead, I gave a nod, ushered the boy inside. He hugged me, then disappeared into the living room. You and I stood there in the doorway. A beat passed. "How was he?" You asked softly. "He was fine. Thank you," you whispered, your voice catching. I looked at you, noticing new lines on your face. You seemed older too. Maybe we both aged a decade in those few months. I didn't respond with anything more than a slight shrug, but I saw a flicker of relief in your eyes. You probably feared I still hated you. Maybe a part of me did, but the rage was no longer scorching. I felt mostly empty, or maybe just indifferent. That was the last time we spoke face to face in any meaningful way. In subsequent weeks, we communicated via text about the boy's schedule, about pickups and drop-offs. We existed in that space, cordial but distant. And I, for the first time in a long time, started to dream about the future. Not the future we'd once planned. No white picket fence, no illusions of eternal bliss, but a future that belonged to me alone. I didn't date right away. I wasn't ready. Instead, I let myself heal, piece by piece, acknowledging the scars without letting them rule me. Now, nearly a year has passed since the divorce was finalized. I still carry the memory of what happened, the image of you and Sam burning in my mind. But it's a memory that no longer commands my every breath. My chest pains are fewer and farther between. My father said to me recently, "James, you seem calmer." I suppose I am. I'm calmer because I've survived the worst betrayal I could imagine, and I'm still standing. That's why I'm telling this story, in my own words, from the vantage point of the man I am now. A man who has lost illusions but gained clarity. A man who once watched his wife's betrayal through a camera lens, feeling like his soul was being ripped out. A man who discovered that the child he adored wasn't his by blood, yet remains bound to him by something stronger than DNA. A man who walked away, quietly, refusing to feed the flames of revenge with violence or cruelty. Because in the end, I realized my revenge was living a life unshackled. Not letting rage devour me, not letting bitterness define me. I never gave you the dramatic confrontation you might have expected. I gave you a cold, absolute departure. I took my dignity, my pride, and I left. My words, that day in your apartment, were the final blade that cut through any illusions. Sometimes I still wonder what might have been if you confided in me, or if I'd noticed your restlessness sooner. But those are pointless questions. We can't rewrite the past. All we can do is live with the consequences. And so, here I am, telling you. I don't hate you anymore, Melissa Browning Carter. I don't wish you well. And I don't wish you ill. You're simply a part of my past. I release you. That's the final truth. That's what it means to be free of the illusions we once built. That's what it means to face the harsh sunlight of reality, with all its scars and revelations. People ask me sometimes if I regret not making you suffer more. If I regret not taking Sam Avery to task in a more violent, direct manner. Perhaps a year ago, that idea appealed to me. But now, I see no point in dwelling on fantasies of vengeance. You're both living with your decisions. That in itself is punishment enough. I have my life, my own place, my job, my weekends with a boy who calls me dad, even if we share no common blood. I have the memory of a marriage that once felt unbreakable, and the reminder that nothing is guaranteed, no matter how steadfast we think we are. Some days, I still get twinges of sadness. On those days, I take a walk along the old streets of Cleveland, watch the cars pass, or maybe I drive out to Lake Erie and stare at the water, letting the cold wind slap my cheeks. In those moments, I let myself grieve for the man I used to be, the life I thought I had. Then I breathe, and I move on. That's all there is. Life goes on. People break, but they also heal. Pain can define you, or it can be the stepping stone to a new self. I choose the latter. Even if I don't fully know who I am yet, I know I'm not that broken man from the camera feed. So that's my final word. Melissa Browning Carter. That's the story of your betrayal, Sam's complicity, and my awakening. I have no more questions, no more demands. And if there's a moral here, maybe it's that sometimes the quietest revenge is the most profound. A revenge where you simply walk away, say nothing more than the truth that needs saying, and reclaim your life. Because in the end, I am standing, I am breathing, and I am free.